The NFL offseason is in full swing, and it's time to power rank the divisions 1 through 8. But let's start with number 8.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome in to a Wednesday edition of Locked On NFL. He is Chris Carter. I'm James Rapien, and we are going to get to exactly what you want, which is the power ranking of each division here, 1 through 8. We're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. But before we do that, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And thank you, as always, for making us your first listen. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow wherever you get your podcasts here on Locked On NFL. And Chris, well, it's that time of year where we're going to power rank these divisions. And look, I was just breaking it down by conference before the show. The AFC is so loaded.
Yeah,
So
it really is.
I think the divisions could be lopsided. That's a bold prediction here, but we'll see how you feel about that and where we stand, how common some of our places are when we rank these divisions.
Yeah, it's funny. We almost did this topic I want to say a month ago or a few weeks ago. And, we were kind of like, oh, no, let's talk about more relevant things. We've been waiting to kind of debate this. But this is always a fun thing at this time of the year where, hey, not a lot of news is going on. So let's do some overlooking the league type topics where we see who's the best at different things. Last week we talked about rookie awards, but I think debating what is the actual best division in football, it involves a lot of different fan bases who feel really strongly that not only are their team the best, but also they're in the toughest division in football. We'll get to who's the toughest, but we should start with who's the worst division in football right now, James. And to me, James, there's no question in my eyes. It is none other than the NFC South, because they got bottom feeders on bottom feeders, and their top. Listen, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they did their thing in beating the Eagles in the playoffs, and they figured it out. But I am not fully confident that the Buccaneers and the Saints are going to be all that this year. I think the Falcons are still going to struggle. I think the Panthers still got a long way to go. They could surprise me, but to me, that is the worst division in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was going through it and I'm like, all right, well, let's try not to hammer the South here because they got crushed and they've been crushed the past couple of years. The Buccaneers won the division last year. 2 years ago, they win the division with a losing record, win it last year with a 9-8 record. And you look at some of these other divisions and it's like, all right, well, these teams are winning 12 games. They're divisions where multiple teams are winning double-digit games. And the South can't even have one of those teams. And you're absolutely right. And Kirk Cousins may help that some. Year or two of Derek Carr with the Saints, I guess. Baker Mayfield, will he be able to do what he did last year at a higher level for the Bucs? Could Bryce Young take a step forward? Like there's question marks everywhere, I would say. And that's just starting with the quarterbacks. That's not getting into the coaches. That's not getting into the rosters overall. I agree. I think it's by far the worst division, top to bottom, and you could see multiple teams here drafting in the top 10 next year. By the way, they did have 2 teams drafting in the top 10 this year.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the whole thing is, do you see a division with too many teams way down at the bottom? And that's kind of where I judge, are you the worst division, is what kind of competition do you bring to the rest of the league? When people match up with your division in that year, are they thinking like, oh man, this ain't that bad, or I'm worried about someone else, or are they saying, oh crap, we matched up with this division, we got to play all 4 of these teams? That's where I think that if you matched up with the NFC South, you're not stressing about that nearly as much as other divisions here. But James, who's your number 7 division in the NFL right now?
Yeah, it is. This is where it gets
tougher here.
Tough right away, because let's just talk about the NFC for a second.
Yeah.
The East, well, they have a Super Bowl contender in the Eagles and another team that is expecting to be right there in Dallas. The West, well, they have 2 playoff teams and then a team in Seattle, a team in Arizona looking to take a step forward. So it's tough here, and we talked about the AFC some, and I do wonder here where the AFC South falls. It's not their time yet,
Tough.
but South, I'm coming for you soon. I think it is it's really tough, but I think it's the North. I think it's the NFC North. And look, Chicago's unproven. The Vikings have a huge question mark at quarterback. Jordan Love took a step last year. We'll see if he takes another step forward and becomes one of these high-end quarterbacks. I think he can, but will he? And then Detroit. I like Detroit a lot. There's a lot of talent there. Are we buying that they're one of these elite teams? Because if not, I don't think there is an elite team in the NFC North. And if there's not an elite team, you look at these other divisions, and there's a team or two that we're thinking is going to be right there, right in the mix for a Super Bowl. And so I think that the NFC North takes the crown here, but it gets really tough right away. And it shows how deep the league is, how many quality teams there are, because I struggled with this one. I could have went a few different ways, but I'm going to go with the North.
I feel you, man. I absolutely feel you on the North. It's not the Lions, will this be a one and done season of them being a team that's a legit Super Bowl contender? Who knows? Is Jordan Love the real deal? Will the Vikings, I will say the Vikings winning 7 games last year when they were starting Josh Dobbs, like when there was a point of the year last year where everyone's like, is Josh Dobbs that guy? And as a person who really appreciates Josh Dobbs, because I got to cover him when he was with the Steelers and he's an awesome person, I was like, oh man, they're gonna find out soon. Like, as much as I'm like, that's not a slight to Josh Dobbs, but eventually people are like, oh no, he is just a backup quarterback, and now they're seeing that. I'm intrigued about the Bears because they've made so many additions this year. They could take a step up. So, like, I'm agree with you that the North is 7 right now, because I don't know if the Bears are going to be it. I don't know if the Vikings are going to be it. I think the Packers can take steps forward, but I also don't know if the Lions are going to be all that for a second year in a row. I think that they have a chance to be, but particularly because when we start looking at these other divisions, I think that there's a better potential for these other divisions to have more serious battles in the middle of the division, maybe not just for the winner, but for teams to make the wild cards than the North has. I don't think the Vikings are a playoff team this year. I don't think the Bears are going to be a playoff team this year. I think the Packers are still going to have to fight to get in like they did last year. And that's why I look at some of these other divisions, and I think there's multiple playoff teams that I see most likely coming out of them.
Yeah, I agree. And that was kind of the tiebreaker here for me, and they had 2 playoff teams last year, Packers getting in at 9-8, but I mentioned them before, and AFC South is next up for me. I think putting them at 6, I like Houston a lot, and I like CJ Stroud, and I think they're going to be really good again. I think Jacksonville is in this weird period right now where they're going to pay Trevor Lawrence, but how good are they really? And what is that roster? We'll see. The Colts, I like. The Titans, they're rebuilding. I like some of their offseason moves. But top to bottom, there's no Carolina in this division.
Right.
And would it shock me if Indianapolis took a big step forward with Anthony Richardson healthy and they pushed Houston in that division? No. Would it shock me if Trevor Lawrence won the AFC South? No. So we're talking about 3 teams now that could realistically contend for that division. And I think they could have 2 playoff teams. So this would have been the worst division a few years ago. Now I don't think it is, and it's slowly moving up. And I'm not crowning the Jags, or I'm not crowning the Colts. Obviously, everyone's crowning the Texans, but I think the Colts and the Jaguars are going to be competitive for sure.
You and I are in lockstep. I have AFC South. And the reason
we didn't discuss this, folks. We didn't discuss this before either.
We did not. We literally we're doing this. We're doing this, and so we're coming with this. But the reason I look at the AFC South going off of last year, like, the Jaguars at one point in the middle part of the season would look like a real problem, and then they had an epic collapse. And that's how the Steelers made the playoffs in a lot of respects. Like, if the Jaguars just win a couple more games, or even win one more game, the Steelers don't make the playoffs last year. So, like, their collapse was there. Anthony Richardson not being in there for the Colts, they also needed to win one more game, and they could have been in the playoffs. The Titans, who knows what happens there. But to me, CJ Stroud being at the top of this while having 2 teams that just missed the playoffs last year, that's what makes this division slightly better than the NFC North, where I could see the Bears and the Vikings still kind of muddling around, not being a playoff team and having to do another year of a rebuild as part of their rebuilding process. So right now, so far, we have the NFC South at 8, the NFC North at 7, and the AFC South at 6. But we got a lot more to discuss here, James, because now I think we start getting into the debate. What makes the division better here?
No doubt. Let's do that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA Finals are almost here, and maybe you think the Boston Celtics right now minus 220 to take home the crown. Well, maybe they will, and that's why you got to get to FanDuel, because right now you throw $5 on any bet, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets when that $5 bet hits. I'll say it again. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So don't delay, whether it's baseball, whether it's the NHL playoffs, whether it's the NBA Finals. Get in on the action with FanDuel, whether it's the Celtics, the Mavericks, or your favorite NHL team, by going to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Again, that's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more, because new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Back here in the Locked On NFL podcast, it's the Wednesday edition with Chris Carter and James Rapien. James, we're ranking the divisions. We're power ranking the divisions in the NFL right now. We said the NFC. We both said the NFC South was 8. We both said the NFC North was 7. We both said the AFC South was 6. But now we get to the 5th. Now we're starting to get more into the middle of the pack. The two teams the two divisions that rank in the middle here. And man, this is where it gets tricky for me, because now we start to debate what makes a division better. Is it having the team is it having the best team in football? Is it having one of the teams that you can say definitely is, a Super Bowl contender, or has won the Super Bowl, or is in the Super Bowl? Or is it having more teams that make the playoffs? Is it having more teams that are legitimate playoff contenders? And that's where a debate can be had here, because I'm going with a team that with a division that we referenced earlier. And I'm going to say my number 5 division is the NFC East. Because
come on, man.
Listen, hear me out.
No,
hear me out.
I wrote it down already. NFC East. So right now we're 4 for 4. I'm just
let's go.
It's wild to me. It is wild up in here.
But look,
goodness. Go ahead. Go with your logic.
Here's my reasoning. Let's work from the bottom way up in the NFC East. The Commanders, maybe they're better this year with Jaden Daniels. Maybe they're better, but I still think that there's a lot of rebuilding that needs to happen there. They're still going to be a team that's not even in the playoff conversation, in my opinion. The Giants, good luck. I think that the Giants are in this race. So right now, half of these teams aren't playoff teams right now. And I am just not sure about the Eagles, man. I know they were 11-6 last year. I know they were in the Super Bowl just 2 years ago. But the way they went out last year and the lack of confidence in Nick Sirianni, I am not feeling like they're like they are going to be this super contender like they were 2 years ago, or even the first half of last year, where they were beating teams like the Chiefs. And you saw like there was all this Super Bowl hype. The way they collapsed last year, I just think that the Eagles are in for a lot of trouble. I still think the Cowboys make the playoffs, but I also think they make the playoffs and they do what the Cowboys have done for the past 30 years of my life, or 20 years, however long it's been since they were a serious Super Bowl contender that made the NFC Championship game. I think they're going to be in. They're going to be beaten quickly, and everyone's going to move on. That's why I have the NFC East at 5. I think the Eagles and the Cowboys, they're both playoff contenders, but I think the Eagles might have a fall off this year and miss, and I don't think the Dallas Cowboys, when they get to the playoffs, match up well with some of the other top teams in the conference.
Yeah, I think they may have one playoff team. The Eagles stubbed their toe on the way out of last season. I like some of their offseason moves. We'll see. In Dallas, man, they have such a variance home road. They were undefeated at home last year, on the road, losing record, dominated this division. I wonder about Dallas. I got to be honest, because you got Brandon Cook saying, "Oh yeah, well our third receiver is going to step up," and it's just risky. They're a risky bet right now, I think. So It's Philly in a question mark in Philly. A team that I like is a sleeper in Washington. The Giants stink, to be quite honest. And so who are you banking on? So I think they had 2 playoff teams a year ago. Could they have 2 playoff teams again? Absolutely. That's why they're not lower. But I have them here. We're on lockstep number 5. Let's get to number 4. And after going back to the NFC, I'm coming back to the AFC. And this may surprise some because this is the home, Chris, of the back-to-back Super Bowl champions.
I'm right with you.
The Kansas City Chiefs are awesome. No one's denying that. The Raiders stink. The Denver Broncos stink. And I actually think the Chargers are going to be pretty good, but they won 5 games last year. And still, until they're good, I can't crown them. And so it's the Chiefs and then a bunch of competitive teams, not bad teams, but not good teams, not Super Bowl contenders. And so the Chiefs are the top of the top, and these other teams are either mediocre or below. You mix it all together, and you have the 4th best division in football.
Well, once again, sir, we are in the same exact position. We only got 3 divisions left, man, to be different here. That's going to be that's. I wonder how you feel like these last week. But to get to the AFC West, absolutely. Look, the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh and the changes that are going to come there. I do think coaching was some of the biggest problems there with Brandon Staley. That could certainly get fixed. Justin Herbert being healthy, all of that could change everything about the Chargers this year. But even with that, I still don't believe in whatever the Broncos are doing with Bo Nix and Sean Payton. I think that's a disaster waiting to happen. I like Antonio Pierce. I think that he can do something special in Las Vegas. I just think that the Raiders, they're like they still need a quarterback. They still need a better situation for them. I think that they're going to be they overperformed last year when Antonio Pierce took over, and they were still 8-9. So I think this is going to be another rough year for them. So unless if the Chargers ball out and they do some great stuff with Jim Harbaugh, great. But I still think them and Kansas City are carrying this division. Whereas I think some of these other divisions are in the conversation to have 3 legit playoff contenders, and that's some maybe even 4 when we get to the top of the top here. But yeah, I have to put the AFC West at 4, but I guess that's not really a slight to this division because that means you're right in the middle of the pack. And but the big thing, like you said, it's kind of being held up in the middle of the pack by the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs are at the top there at the Super Bowl winners there. But let's move up, and now this is where I think things can get really dicey because now we might have a difference here. Your number 3 team, James Rapien, or number 3 division, here in the NFL. I'm going with the AFC East. I'm gonna go with the AFC East here because I am not 100% certain that the Bills, who have been running the division for the past few years since the Patriots fell off, are going to be that team this year. I am not 100% certain the Dolphins will ever be that team this year. Moving forward, I think that they're a team that every year they get really exciting. Oh, they do some really smart stuff on offense. They have all this speed, and then it all phases at the end of the season, and we keep seeing them just not be this super team that everyone thinks that they could be. And the Jets could be something with Aaron Rodgers, but I need to see it. I'm not. I don't believe in this Jets team as a whole, and I'm sorry. The Patriots. I know that they got Drake May and everything. They're still a few years of a rebuild away. So I think this is still a competitive division. Like I said, it's the number 3 division in the NFL for me, but I put it below the others because I think that maybe 2 teams make the playoffs from this division, but I still think that there's going to be some serious bottom feeders here. And I don't think that there's a team that reaches the top of their conference out of the AFC East the way that the other 2 divisions have teams like that.
Well, Chris and I see eye to eye with the AFC East being the 3rd best division in the NFL. I'll answer that coming up next right here on Locked On NFL. All right, Chris, this is where we differ. I was wondering when it would happen. And, we go 5 straight, 8 through 3, or 8 through 2, or 4 rather, 5 straight. Jeez, I can't count.
It's all right.
But the 3rd, I have the NFC West here. And it's really close. But to me, we know what the 49ers roster brings. And we'll see what they do with Brandon Ayuk, one of the best teams in football. The Rams surprised a lot of people last year. They were a sleeper of mine going into last season. People kind of dismissed them after that down year following their Super Bowl run. Stafford got hurt, all of those things. I do think they're a good team. I wonder now without Aaron Donald if they are going to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I feel
We'll see. The Cardinals are a little bit better. The Seahawks, they're fine. And I don't really blame Geno Smith rather for last year and 9-8. But I do wonder when the Geno Smith experiment, I don't want to say ends, but when he just kind of shows that he's a veteran starting quarterback, and that's it. And you know, they had a winning record last year. Would it shock me if they had a losing record, especially with the Cardinals probably taking a step forward, expecting them to take a step forward? Wouldn't shock me. It also wouldn't shock me if the 49ers took a step back. I think that's sort of realistic at this point. They've made so many runs, and at some point it just catches up with you. So we'll see. But I think they're really good. Wouldn't shock me if one of these teams, especially Rams, 49ers, makes a deep playoff run. At the same time, I think they're a two-team division and of legitimate potential contenders if things go right. Meanwhile, I look at the AFC East, and they're my second team, and you had them third. The reason I give them the edge, I think New England's bad. Okay, so they're probably around Arizona, give or take. But the other three teams, Buffalo, Miami, New York, there's a scenario, and I'm not saying it's the most likely scenario, but there's a scenario where all three of those teams not only make the playoffs, but are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And I think the Bills, good luck counting Josh Allen out. I'm not going to do that. I get the Tua Tagovailoa questions. I have questions about him. Plenty of weapons, plenty of speed. They're built to win in Miami. They should win a bunch of games this year. And then the Jets, they're such a good roster. Like if Rodgers just stays healthy and is an average starting quarterback, they're probably going to the playoffs because that defense is awesome and Breece Hall is awesome and Garrett Wilson's really good. You know, I could go on and on about those guys. And so looking at it, better offensive line. Is Rodgers' health a huge concern? Absolutely it is. But I do think that they're better. And by the way, did they or did they not? Let me make sure that they did this. Yeah, they signed Tyrod Taylor, who is 34 years old, but he's a fellow Leo, by the way. August 3rd is his birthday. Same birthday as Tom Brady, for those keeping track. But he's a solid backup quarterback. If Tyrod Taylor has to start 5 games, could the Jets go 3-2 in those 5 starts? I think so.
I've seen him do it. I've seen him carry a team.
And so that's why I give the edge to the AFC East here, just slightly over the NFC West.
Look, the AFC East is also is my third team. The NFC West is my second team. The only reason I put the NFC West really above them is because I don't think that anyone in the AFC East is an actual Super Bowl contender this year. I don't doubt that Josh Allen is going to make the Bills competitive, but there was also a point last year where people thought the Bills had crashed, and Josh Allen was able to revive them. But I think this Bills team is starting to feel the impact of Josh Allen's contract. I think they're starting to feel the impact of not building more with really great draft picks while they've had Josh Allen, and I think that they're going to start to feel the pushback of that by not being as serious of a Super Bowl contender. Like I just look at this team and like that they need Keon Coleman as a rookie to be a superstar because they need somebody to step up in the place of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, who they lost both there. Because Curtis Samuel's another receiver, Khalil Shakir. I don't see it happening with the passing game. I mean, Josh Allen's going to do some great things, but I think that eventually he's going to get let down by a receiving core that still needs to develop a little bit, and a defense that I'm not 100% certain is going to really be that kind of the kind of defense that can carry if the offense does slow up next year. So the main reason is when I look over and I look at the NFC West, I see the Niners, and yes, I do think the Niners could take a step back, but in the NFC, I think they're still kind of my favorite to win the NFC, and that's why I jumped the NFC West ahead of them. The Rams, yes, losing Aaron Donald, Pitt grad, by the way, in Pittsburgh's own, he's that's a huge blow to them, but Matt Stafford's still there. They still got Cooper Kupp. Puka Nacua is coming on well. I think their offensive line's been developing. I think the Rams could still be a problem that makes the playoffs. And I think the Seahawks, they were very close to making the playoffs last year. They're another team that I think could take that step up, while the Cardinals, maybe they're not the bottom feeders they were last year. Maybe they can figure something out. I look at the other division and I'm like, I think the AFC East still has questions to it. But certainly, again, we're debating between who's second and who's third. And I think that's an easy one to flip flop between who's the runner up here, because James, there is no debate who is the best division in football. What 4 teams make for the best competition? I think everyone in the world. Heck, we saw around the NFL draft, CJ Stroud and Micah Parsons threw down about this debate. And we see Micah Parsons saying the NFC East is out of here. We both ranked them at 5. Get the heck out of here. It is the AFC North. That is the undisputed best division in football. 3 teams made the playoffs last year, and it was very close to being 4 because the Bengals were 9-8 without Joe Burrow. So I look at this. You have the Ravens 13-4 last year. They're only getting better. You still got Lamar Jackson. You got the Browns. Honestly, I don't know about them with Deshaun Watson being back. I think him being out actually kind of helped them last year because he was holding them back a lot. So with him being back this year, we'll see how that works out. But you got the Steelers, who were 10-7 with Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Mitch Trubisky. And now you give them either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields to just not screw it up. I think that team can still be a double-digit win team that ekes their way into the playoffs. And then, by the way, you have the Cincinnati Bengals, who, again, were a 9-win team without Joe Burrow. Yes, the defense has questions. Yes, the offensive line has questions, but you still got Jamar Chase. You presumably still have T. Higgins. You're going to have Joe Burrow throw into those guys. That team is still going to be a problem top to bottom. I would take if I'm the NFC division that has to play the AFC North this year, I'm looking up like what? Why does God hate me? Why has this been done to my life to have to play all 4 of these teams? Because all 4 of these teams are problems in their own rights.
No doubt. I mean, that all 4 of them could be playoff teams. Like it would not shock. I mean, it would, right? It would surprise.
It's never happened. It's never happened since the 8 divisions have been created of 4 teams each.
But all 4 have the talent to do so. Like it's really easy to paint the picture, paint the path for the Bengals to get back to the playoffs or win the division. We know what the Ravens are. We saw them last year, especially with Lamar healthy. The Steelers have gotten better with Patrick Queen. They added 2 quarterbacks, one of which should be better, if not 2 should be better than what they had last year. I mean, you look at it, and Cleveland, hell, they may have the worst quarterback in the division. You never know. But even so, their roster is awesome.
Yep.
Their defense is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
They have quality skill players. They go out and get a Jerry Jeudy to go with Amari Cooper. They have David Njoku, who's the second best tight end in the division for my money. Let me make sure. Yeah, I feel confident in saying that, especially from a passing game standpoint. And so it's like, I know you like Pat Freiermuth. I get it. He's up there too. But the point is like, they still got guys. And so even with, and that's how Joe Flacco was able to get back in the league, have success. And now I think he's on the Colts. Jameis Winston, by the way, is a solid backup. I think is not afraid, of course, to sling it. So you look at this division top to bottom and you feel good. And let's just say, by the way, if you're worried about Joe Burrow's injury, well, we saw Jake Browning can keep the team afloat. Is he Burrow? No, but he can keep the team afloat. And so, I mean, a lot of these, we're talking about 2 deep at quarterback. In a lot of instances, the Ravens, they've thrived at times without Lamar Jackson, not to the level that they do with Lamar, but they've kept their head above water. And so these teams, they're that talented, they're that well coached. It is by far head and shoulders above the rest of the league. And that's why these games are so competitive and physical. And obviously we've covered countless AFC North games, going to cover more this year. It's the most physical division in the NFL, the most talented division in the NFL, the deepest division in the NFL. And oh, by the way, let's say Deshaun Watson is good. Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and then Russell Wilson / Justin Fields. Like, that's a lot of talent at the quarterback position as well.
I agree with you. Like, this is the division where I think it could easily be the division that eats itself, but also still like everyone could end up around like having like 3-3 division records, but still then destroy the other teams that they face throughout the year, and then they all end up having a chance to make the playoffs here. I think that, we talk, defensive wise, the Steelers and the Browns are right there at the top of the league, while you still have 2 of the best franchise quarterbacks in the league as well, in Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. I look at that, man, and I think like, man, like there's a lot of potential here. I want to ask you this question. if you were to say what is more likely, is it more likely that this year there will be one team from the AFC North that makes the playoff, or the entire division makes the playoffs? What is more likely in your mind?
I would say one.
Ooh.
Only because, and you already mentioned it, all four, it just rarely happens, if ever. Two, there's a real scenario where they just beat the crap out of each other. And
very possible.
And the winner of this division is limping to an 11-6 record, and there are multiple 9-8 teams that lose the tiebreaker, and then there's a 7 or 8 win team. Like that could realistically happen. And it's happened in recent years, and I don't need to paint the picture of what needs to happen injury-wise for that to be realistic, but could easily happen because these teams are so evenly matched. So last year, obviously, they racked up a bunch of wins. Every team had a winning record. I would say that won't happen this year. Something's going to happen that's going to make it tough. Doesn't mean that they don't have the talent to do it. Of course they do. But you know how the season is. So I would say 1 over 4. The most likely scenario is 2. I would think that the second most likely is 3, by the way, and then 1 and then 4, just to rank it even more.
That makes sense to me. I could see that certainly happening there. I think that I don't think there's going to be one team that makes the playoffs out of this division. I think that there's, like when we were talking about the reason why all these other divisions ranked beneath the AFC North and why they were, kind of working their way up, is I don't know if there's another team that comes out of the AFC West. I don't know if there's another team that comes out of the AFC South. There might be a team that comes out of the AFC East, and who knows? The Chargers could rise up, the Jaguars, the Dolphins could still be that team. But I think there's also a chance that like this division certainly could beat up on itself, and there's some tough records there in within the division. But I think that with the way that things are lined up this year, like we both rank the NFC East as the 5th best division. That's the division that the AFC North gets to play this year. Mm-hmm. I think that all 4 of these teams run through the Commanders and they run through the Giants. I think that the division will do well against the Eagles and do well enough against the Cowboys that you look at how that all stacks out after the fact. That could be a big part that what boosts the AFC North is who they play. So I hear you on one team could make it, because you know what? Hey, there's always risers. Aaron Rodgers being with the Jets, we still don't know what that's going to be like in the AFC East. We talked about how the Jaguars and the Colts just missed it last year. The Chargers, there could be teams that rise up in all 3 of the other AFC divisions, but I would just not sleep on any of the teams in the AFC North, because all 4 of them could bring it this year and bring it in different ways. Like none of them are constructed the exact same way. The Ravens with Lamar Jackson love to run it. The Steelers play great defense and are becoming a more physical team. The Browns, they play great defense, and I think they're still trying to figure out what they're doing with Deshaun Watson this year, and they're still trying to build off of kind of the drafts that they haven't had recently. So that'll be interesting, because they traded away all their draft picks. And the Bengals, they're trying to get back to being the team they were just 2 years ago when Joe Burrow was healthy. So I think there's a lot going for this division. But to recap here, we both had the NFC South at 8. We both had the NFC North at 7. We both had the AFC South at 6, the NFC East at 5, the AFC South at 4. I had the AFC East at 3. You had the NFC West at 3. I had the NFC West at 2. You had the AFC East at 2. But we both had the AFC North as the best division in football. I think that's very interesting. I'm interested to hear what other people think out there, though. Are we crazy? Are we underlooking or overlooking other teams? Are we underestimating other teams in certain divisions that are going to rise up this year? Yeah, that's always the big question: is who surprises the most in some of these divisions here?
Yeah. Excited to see the comments. Chime in. Thank you so much for listening. The NFL offseason, well, it's well underway, but we are not going to stop. We'll talk to you every single Wednesday, and Locked On NFL will be here for you 5 times a week. So subscribe on YouTube, follow wherever you get your podcast. And for Chris Carter, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for listening and watching Locked On NFL.